after a while of listening to the Department of Homeland Security head, Alejandro Mayorkas, tell us that the border is secure, you would think that would make him a prime target for impeachment. In fact, you've heard Representative Ashley Hinson on this show openly call just a few days ago for the impeachment of Mayorkas. Well, Democrats, joining with 8 Republicans, have blocked a resolution to impeach Mayorkas. Let's talk this over with a political strategist and a commentator with Young Voices. Elizabeth Grace Matthew is on my Davison Family Dentistry Newsmaker line this morning. And Elizabeth, welcome to Iowa Radio. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Elizabeth, is it as obvious as I think it should be that we impeach this guy? Like, if I hire somebody, I don't know, to paint my house and they leave the house half painted, I'm unhappy. You didn't do your job. This guy's not doing his job. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it. How are you looking at this?
I think that there's obviously a lot of validity to that perspective, but I do think that this is a broader issue too, in the sense that, the Biden administration has policies that are leading to this, and some of them even predate the Biden administration under Obama and otherwise. And so because of that reality, it's not as clear, I guess, to some of the Republicans that voted with the Democrats not to impeach, that this individual is as much to blame as the broader policies that have created this situation.
Okay, that's a broader perspective, Elizabeth, as you said. So let's take it from that perspective, because I appreciate it. If it is the policy of this administration to let it go on, what we see at the border, and their main concern's processing people, it's not actually closing the border, realistically, you impeach this person and another person just comes on to perpetuate the policies of this administration. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that would argue that that's exactly what you're dealing with. And so that the impeachment is in some ways, a Band-Aid for a gushing wound, or not even a Band-Aid, because it's just going to continue unabated so long as the policies are what they are.
But you know what, Elizabeth, let me play devil's advocate with you, because I can hear the listeners at this point in my head going, but the Republicans got to do something. And rather than just go, it's just the way this is. I mean, this is something, but what should the Republicans do on this?
I think there's a lot of disagreement about that. One of the encouraging things I'm seeing, there's not a lot to encourage us in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the lenient enforcement or non-enforcement of real borders of any kind. However, if you notice that Mayor Eric Adams, who's a Democrat in New York City, has been sounding the alarm on this. He's been explaining what it's doing to his schools, what it's doing to the streets, and there may be many folks in the GOP that say, too little, too late. But, it's never too late to begin to build a coalition of the commonsensical that might include some of these Democrats with a reality principle, as well as some of these Republicans who are recognizing that this is going to be a big issue for 2024. So my hope would be that there could be some support built even across some of these party lines to try to recognize that this is impacting not just the border at this point, but cities across the country.
Right. So, Elizabeth, here's why what you're saying makes sense to me. I'll bring up a recent aid package to Israel where, the Republicans tied aid to Israel to cuts in the IRS. And you suspected that all the Democrats would vote against it, but some of them didn't. Because the political pressure was out there. They were not willing to vote against an aid package to Israel. On the border, could you see some Democrats going along with the Republicans along the same line? Like, the political pressure is just too much. We got to do something to actually protect the border.
Yes, I think you're going to begin to see some of that, partly because as we move toward 2024, there is the incentive to moderate, right, for general elections.
Yeah.
And partly because many Democrats that sort of go along with Democratic excesses of the left fringe on social issues are less willing to do so when it comes to security. And even though that may not seem to be the case with some of the rhetoric, particularly coming out of 2020, on the ground, you do see Democrats attempting to resist some of that. You saw John Fetterman in my home state of Pennsylvania at the March for Israel yesterday.
Yeah.
And so forth. And so I think that those are the types of issues when we're talking about security where you are most likely to peel off bipartisan support.
It's an interesting strategy, and it's a strategy focused on winning on this fight. That is political strategist and commentator for Young Voices, Elizabeth Grace Matthew. Elizabeth, thanks for your view on this issue.